The breaking point. The Galactic Assembly Hall orbited the neutral moon of Keras 7, a structure built from crystalline materials that caught starlight and transformed it into dancing colors across its vast chamber. Representatives from 62 different species gathered here quarterly to discuss trade agreements, territorial disputes, and the general maintenance of civilized space. The hall had stood for 800 years without witnessing a true war between its members. Peace, it seemed, was the natural state of advanced civilizations. Ambassador Michael Torres stood in the human delegation zone, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he observed the proceedings. At 63 years old, his dark hair had gone silver at the temples and deep lines marked his face. He had served Earth's diplomatic corps for 30 years, spending the last decade as the primary representative to the Assembly. In that time, he had negotiated mining rights, cultural exchange programs, and immigration treaties. He had built friendships with alien diplomats and earned respect through patience and reason. Humanity had joined the galactic community 150 years ago, emerging from their single star system with crude, faster-than-light drives and wide-eyed wonder. The Assembly had welcomed them cautiously, assigning mentors and monitors to ensure these newcomers understood the rules of civilized space. Humans adapted quickly, perhaps too quickly. They established colonies, opened trade routes, and became known as reliable mediators in minor disputes. Their tendency toward empathy and emotional reasoning made them excellent peacekeepers. The galaxy forgot to ask why humanity needed such strict rules about peacekeeping in the first place. Torres turned his attention to the current speaker, Ambassador Vrek of the Zelkari Dominion. The Zelkari were imposing creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms and chitinous exoskeletons that gleamed like polished obsidian. Their compound eyes saw in spectrums humans couldn't perceive, and their civilization controlled 7 star systems rich in rare elements. More importantly, they supplied the energy crystals that powered most galactic technology. This made them valuable, and value bought tolerance. Vrek was presenting the Dominion's proposal to expand into the outer fringe territories, areas technically unclaimed but used by smaller species for resource gathering. His voice, translated through neural interface technology, carried a tone of bored superiority. The Dominion's expansion benefits all species through increased crystal production. Minor inconveniences to fringe populations are acceptable costs for galactic progress. Several delegates nodded in agreement. The Ythrani representative, a floating jellyfish-like being, pulsed with approval. Economic logic always won in the Assembly. Torres felt his jaw tighten but said nothing. This was how things worked here. Power spoke and lesser voices went unheard. The session was interrupted by an urgent transmission request from Earth. Torres felt his heart skip. Urgent communications during Assembly sessions were rare and never brought good news. He accepted the connection through his neural implant, keeping his expression neutral as the message downloaded directly into his consciousness. New Dawn had gone silent. The colony world was home to 4.5 million human settlers. Located in a resource-rich system near the border of Zelkari space, it had been humanity's most successful colony. Engineers had built floating cities above crystal blue oceans. Farmers had adapted Earth crops to alien soil. Teachers had opened schools where human children learned alongside the offspring of 3 other species who had settled there peacefully. It was everything humanity hoped to achieve in space. A true, melting pot of cultures building something new together. The communications array had stopped transmitting 16 hours ago. All quantum entanglement links had gone dark simultaneously. Initial scans showed no natural phenomena that could explain the blackout. Earth's emergency response protocols had been activated immediately. Torres closed his eyes briefly, forcing himself to maintain composure. Technical failures happened. Solar flares, equipment malfunctions, even accidents. There were innocent explanations. He repeated this to himself as he requested an emergency recess and retreated to the human delegation's private chambers. The next 6 hours were torture. Torres and his staff monitored incoming data as Earth's rapid response ships jumped toward New Dawn. The journey took 3 hours at maximum speed. When the first ship dropped out of FTL at the system's edge, its initial scan results made the captain vomit on his own bridge. New Dawn's orbital stations were debris. The floating cities were burning wrecks sinking into the oceans. The agricultural zones were scorched wastelands. And there were bodies. So many bodies. The recordings came next. Personal devices, security, cameras, and ship logs painted a picture of systematic extermination. Zelkari military vessels had arrived without warning or provocation. They had disabled the colony's minimal defense satellites in the first 30 seconds, then begun orbital bombardment. When survivors emerged from emergency shelters, ground troops were waiting. The footage showed Zelkari soldiers executing civilians with calm efficiency. Men, women, children, even the aliens who had settled peacefully alongside humans. No one was spared. 4.5 million people dead in 18 hours. The search and rescue teams found one survivor. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had been conducting deep-sea research 3 kilometers below the ocean surface when the attack began. Her submarine had surfaced to a world of ash and death. She had wandered through the ruins for 6 hours before rescue found her, her mind fractured by what she had witnessed. The medics sedated her immediately, but not before her helmet camera uploaded its recordings. Torres forced himself to watch every second, burning each image into his memory. The Zelkari command frequency had been carelessly left unencrypted. Their communications revealed the truth. This wasn't a military response to a threat. It was preventative extermination. New Dawn's success had worried the Dominion. Humanity was spreading too quickly, establishing colonies too close to Zelkari space. Better to eliminate the problem before it grew larger. The decision had been made at the highest levels of Zelkari government. It was genocide, calculated and deliberate. Torres requested an emergency session of the Galactic Assembly. As the representative of the victim species, his request could not be denied. The delegates gathered within 12 hours, many of them annoyed at the disruption to their schedules. Ambassador Vrek took his position with visible irritation, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. The Assembly's primary arbiter, a century named Keleth, whose species had founded the galactic government, opened the proceedings with formal courtesy. Ambassador Torres, you have called this emergency session. Please present your grievance. Torres stood, his movements slow and controlled. He had not slept in 36 hours. His eyes were red, and his hands trembled slightly as he activated the holographic display. 4.5 million human beings were murdered yesterday. I will show you how they died. The recordings played. Torres had edited nothing, shown no mercy to the delegates who would now witness humanity's suffering. The orbital bombardment lighting up the night sky. Children screaming in the streets. A teacher shielding her students with her own body before the plasma rounds cut through them all. A father carrying his daughter's corpse through burning rubble. The systematic executions of surrender parties carrying white flags. 18 minutes of footage. Several delegates looked away. A few left the chamber entirely. Ambassador Vrek watched without expression, his alien features impossible to read. When the recordings ended, silence filled the vast hall. Torres let it stretch. Let the weight of what they had witnessed settle like stones in their consciences. Then he spoke, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his chest. New Dawn was a peaceful colony. We had no military installations, no weapons capable of threatening the Dominion. Our only crime was existing too close to their territory and thriving. He pulled up intercepted Zelkari communications. These messages prove this attack was planned at the highest levels of Dominion government. This was not a military accident or a response to aggression. This was genocide. Ambassador Vrek rose to his full 3-meter height. The Dominion acted within our sovereign rights to secure our borders. The human colony represented a potential future threat. We eliminated that threat before it could materialize. They were civilians, Torres said quietly. 4.5 million civilians, including children. Strategic thinking requires difficult decisions, Vrek replied. Your species' emotional nature blinds you to practical necessities. The debate that followed crushed something fundamental in Michael Torres's soul. Species after species stood to express concern. to call for investigations to suggest that perhaps both sides bore some responsibility. The Ythrani representative proposed that humanity had been careless in colony placement. The Draken delegate suggested that maybe New Dawn had conducted military research in secret. Each comment felt like another knife in Torres's back. The Reckoning. The Zelkari High Command occupied a massive orbital fortress above their homeworld of Zelkar Prime. The station was a monument to military power, bristling with weapon systems and protected by overlapping shield generators that could withstand sustained bombardment from an entire fleet. 300 warships patrolled the surrounding space in carefully coordinated patterns. The fortress had stood unconquered for 400 years, a symbol of Dominion's strength that inspired confidence in Zelkari superiority. Supreme Commander Thrak stood in the command center, his forearms crossed as he reviewed humanity's declaration of war, with something approaching amusement. At 12 feet tall, he was large even for a Zelkari, his exoskeleton decorated with engravings marking victories in 17 campaigns. He had personally overseen the New Dawn operation, approving the extermination protocols with the same clinical detachment he brought to all strategic decisions. The humans announced their arrival time, he said to his staff officers, mandibles clicking in what passed for Zelkari laughter. They declare coordinates and give us 3 days to prepare. This is either profound stupidity or psychological warfare of the crudest kind. His intelligence officer, a younger Zelkari named Vrel, gestured to the tactical displays. Our analysis suggests it is intimidation theater, Supreme Commander. Humanity has no military capable of threatening the Dominion. Our intelligence assets have monitored their forces for 150 years. They possess approximately 200 light warships, all designed for peacekeeping and patrol duties. No capital ships, no carrier groups, no weapon systems beyond standard defensive armaments. Thrak nodded, but something nagged at his strategic instincts. He had not survived 17 campaigns by underestimating opponents. And yet they broadcast a declaration of war to the entire galaxy. They accept complete loss of surprise. This behavior does not match their profile. Emotional response to tragedy, Vrel suggested. Humans are known for letting feelings override logic. They are making grand gestures to satisfy their need for vengeance, but they lack the capability to follow through. Perhaps, Thrak said slowly. He pulled up the human message again, studying the words. Something about the cold precision of the phrasing troubled him. This did not read like an emotional outburst. It read like a formal legal document, like humanity was carefully establishing justification for what came next. Nevertheless, bring the 5th and 8th fleets to defensive positions. Activate all early warning systems. If the humans are foolish enough to attack, we will educate them about the cost of challenging the Dominion. Across the Zelkari Empire, military forces moved to high alert. The Dominion's 7 systems each maintained substantial defense fleets, but Thrak ordered additional ships to converge on Zelkar Prime. By the time of humanity's announced attack, over 800 Zelkari warships would be positioned to defend the homeworld. It was overwhelming force, enough to crush any fleet humanity could possibly field. The galaxy watched with morbid curiosity. Diplomatic channels buzzed with speculation. Most species assumed humanity was engaging in futile gestures, that they would launch some symbolic attack and then accept mediation. A few, those who had studied human history more carefully, remained silent and waited with growing dread. The Galactic Assembly called an emergency session to discuss preventing the coming conflict. Ambassador Vrek attended via holographic projection, standing confidently as Arbiter Keleth expressed the Assembly's deep concern about potential violence. The Assembly calls upon both parties to exercise restraint, Keleth intoned. Humanity must understand that military action against the Dominion will only result in greater tragedy. We urge Earth to reconsider this path. The human delegation zone remained empty. Earth had withdrawn all diplomatic personnel and refused to respond to Assembly communications. Their silence was more unsettling than threats would have been. 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Zelkari forces maintained maximum readiness, sensors sweeping space for any sign of approaching human ships. Early warning stations positioned at the system's edge reported nothing unusual. Long-range scans detected no fleet movements in nearby systems. As the announced time approached, Supreme Commander Thrak stood in his command center, surrounded by tactical displays showing perfect defensive positioning. Every ship was positioned optimally. Every weapon system was charged and ready. Every contingency had been planned for. 10 minutes to their announced attack time, reported Vrel. No contacts on any sensor system. No FTL signatures, no ship movements, nothing. Thrak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Perhaps it had been psychological warfare after all. Perhaps humanity had hoped to frighten the Dominion into surrender through threats alone. It would be disappointing if true. He had hoped for at least a token fight to justify the Dominion's inevitable response. "Supreme Commander," called out the sensor officer suddenly. I'm detecting something unusual." "Report," Thrak ordered sharply. Multiple gravimetric distortions appearing throughout the system. "Not standard FTL signatures. The pattern is unknown." I count 20, 50, 100. The number keeps increasing. "Supreme Commander, they're appearing inside our defensive perimeter." Alarms began screaming throughout the command center. On the tactical displays, red icons materialized like a plague, appearing seemingly from nowhere in formations surrounding every Zelkari position. Not at the edge of the system where defenders could intercept them, but already in position for attack. "Impossible," Frel breathed. "FTL jumps cannot be executed that deep in a gravity well. The physics doesn't allow it." "Apparently human physics disagrees," Thrak said coldly, his earlier confidence evaporating. "Fleet status report." The tactical officer's voice shook slightly. "Supreme Commander, I count 3,400 human vessels of various classes. Multiple capital ships of unknown configuration. Sensor readings indicate power signatures far exceeding anything in our database. They've achieved complete tactical surprise. 3,000 ships. Humanity had revealed a fleet 15 times larger than intelligence had believed existed." Thrak felt cold certainty settle in his chest. Earth had spent 150 years lying to the galaxy, building a military in secret while pretending to be peaceful. The Dominion had attacked the colony of a species that had been preparing for exactly this scenario since the day they joined galactic civilization. All ships, engage defensive protocols. Activate planetary shields. Send emergency calls to all Dominion fleets. "We are under attack by—" The human fleet opened fire before he could finish. But these were not the plasma weapons or missile systems common in galactic warfare. Beams of coherent light moving at impossible speed slashed through Zelkari shields as if they weren't there, cutting ships in half with surgical precision. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to relativistic speed struck with the force of tactical nuclear weapons. And strangest of all, weapons that seemed to ignore physical distance entirely, causing Zelkari vessels to simply cease functioning, their systems dying simultaneously, despite no visible impact. The defensive fleet that had seemed so formidable minutes ago began disintegrating. Zelkari commanders tried to coordinate responses, but human forces had achieved perfect positioning. Every Dominion ship found itself bracketed by multiple human vessels, caught in crossfires with no room to maneuver. The battle was not a fight but an execution, carefully planned and mercilessly implemented. Thrak watched his carefully constructed defense crumble in less than 6 minutes. "Withdraw all forces to the fortress. We'll make our stand here under the main shields." But the human fleet made no move to assault the fortress directly. Instead, their capital ships took up positions at precise distances, surrounding the orbital installation in a perfect sphere. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to twist. Supreme Commander detecting massive energy buildup from the human capital ships. "Power readings are... This can't be right. These readings would require matter-antimatter reactions at planetary scales." Thrak suddenly understood. The humans weren't going to fight their way through the fortress's defenses. They were going to demonstrate the futility of those defenses. "Evacuate the fortress. All personnel to escape pods now." The order came too late. The human ships fired simultaneously, and the fortress's shields, those impregnable barriers that had withstood 4 centuries of testing, lasted exactly 4.7 seconds. The fortress itself survived another 3 seconds before structural failure caused catastrophic disintegration. Thrak found himself in an escape pod, watching through the viewport as humanity's fleet methodically destroyed every Zelkari military installation in the system. The dockyards that built Dominion warships vanished in brilliant explosions. The weapons platforms orbiting Zelkar Prime were reduced to clouds of debris. Supply depots, communication arrays, everything with military value was systematically eliminated. But the human fleet did not fire on the planet itself, did not target civilian installations, did not bombard population centers. They were being very careful to distinguish between military and civilian targets, showing a restraint the Dominion had not extended to New Dawn. A communication channel opened, broadcasting across all Zelkari frequencies. The voice was calm, female, speaking through translation systems with crystal clarity. This is Admiral Amanda Cortez of the Earth Defense Fleet. The Zelkari Dominion's military forces in this system have been neutralized. Your homeworld is unharmed, as are your civilian populations. This is deliberate. We are not here to commit genocide. We are here to ensure that never happens again. On the planet below, billions of Zelkari civilians watch the skies, seeing their supposedly invincible military scattered like leaves before a storm. The psychological impact was devastating. The Dominion had built its identity on strength and military superiority. Watching that image shattered in less than an hour broke something fundamental in the Zelkari psyche. Zelkar Prime is under human occupation, Admiral Cortez continued. Your government has 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. If Dominion forces attempt to reinforce this system or attack human positions elsewhere, we will proceed to your secondary military installations. We will dismantle your ability to wage war piece by piece until you no longer have the capacity to threaten anyone. This is not negotiable. The transmission ended. Human ships took up orbital positions, their weapons trained on military targets but conspicuously avoiding civilian areas. Ground forces began deploying, not to conquer but to secure military installations and prevent sabotage. Thrak's escape pod was tractored aboard a human ship. He expected execution, torture, the kind of treatment one war criminal might show another. Instead, he found himself in a clean detention cell with food, water, and medical attention for injuries sustained during evacuation. Human soldiers treated him with cold professionalism, not cruelty. A human officer came to interview him, a woman with dark skin and eyes that had seen too much death. She sat across from him without fear, studying him with clinical interest. I am Colonel Maya Richardson, she said. You are Supreme Commander Thrak. You planned the New Dawn operation. You gave the orders that killed 4.5 million human civilians. Thrak said nothing, mandibles tight. You're wondering why you're still alive, Richardson continued. Why we haven't executed you for war crimes? The answer is simple. We're not like you. We don't murder prisoners. We don't exterminate the defenseless. We follow rules of war even when our enemies don't. Then you are weak, Thrak said finally. This is why the Dominion will ultimately prevail. You lack the will to do what is necessary. Richardson smiled, a cold expression that reminded Thrak uncomfortably of prey animals baring their teeth before attacking. You still don't understand. We're going to put you on trial. We're going to present evidence of your crimes to the entire galaxy. We're going to convict you in a court of law, with legal representation and due process, and then we're going to execute you legally, as punishment for genocide. Not because of anger or vengeance, but because you broke the most fundamental law that separates civilization from barbarism. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. You thought our mercy was weakness. But mercy and justice are not the same thing. Mercy is what we showed for 150 years. Justice is what comes now. You're about to learn the difference. Across the Zelkari Dominion, human forces struck with the same precision they had demonstrated at Zelkar Prime. The Dominion's secondary military installations fell within days. Their fleet bases were destroyed or captured. Their weapons production facilities were dismantled. And through it all, human forces maintained strict rules of engagement. Military targets only, no civilian casualties. No orbital bombardments of population centers, no revenge killings. The contrast with the Dominion's actions at New Dawn could not have been clearer. Other species watched, in amazed horror, as Earth demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything in galactic arsenals. The weapon systems alone represented technology generations beyond what humanity had shared. The tactical coordination suggested AI assistance far more sophisticated than galactic standards. And the sheer scale of the hidden fleet proved that humanity had devoted enormous resources to military preparation while pretending to be peaceful. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session, this time without any Zelkari representation. Arbiter Keleth looked out at the gathered delegates with visible distress. The humans have destroyed the Dominion's military capacity in 14 days, he said quietly. Their forces are currently occupying all 7 Zelkari systems. They have not harmed civilian populations, but have placed the entire Dominion under martial law. Earth is demanding the Galactic Assembly recognize their actions as legal military response to genocide. Ambassador Vrek's seat remained empty. The Zelkari diplomat had fled to the Dominion's core worlds, only to be captured by human special forces 3 days later. He was now awaiting trial alongside Supreme Commander Thrak and 200 other Dominion officials accused of planning or executing the New Dawn massacre. "What choice do we have?" asked the Ythrani representative, its bioluminescence flickering nervously. "They have demonstrated power that makes them functionally unstoppable. If we oppose them, they could dismantle the assembly itself." "They could," agreed the Draken delegate, "but they haven't. They have confined their actions to the Dominion. They are carefully following their own rules of war, rules we now realize are far more sophisticated than our own." A new transmission request came from Earth. Arbiter Keleth accepted it, and Ambassador Michael Torres appeared via hologram. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago, lines deepening in his face, but his eyes were hard and unyielding. "The Zelkari Dominion has surrendered unconditionally," Torres announced. "War crimes trials will begin in 30 days, conducted under human legal frameworks but open to galactic observers. We will present evidence of genocide and crimes against sapient beings. Those found guilty will face appropriate punishment, including execution for the worst offenders." The assembly sat in stunned silence. Torres continued, his voice carrying the weight of finality. "The Galactic Assembly failed in its most basic duty to protect innocent life. You allowed genocide to occur and responded with committees and condemnations. You taught us that in this galaxy only power matters, only strength creates safety, only fear earns respect. We have learned your lesson well." He leaned forward slightly, his expression intense. "Earth is establishing new rules for galactic civilization. Rule 1. Genocide will be met with overwhelming military response. Rule 2. War crimes will be prosecuted regardless of the perpetrator's political or economic importance. Rule 3. Civilian populations are absolutely protected in all conflicts. Rule 4. Economic power does not grant immunity from justice. Earth cannot dictate terms to the entire galaxy." Arbiter Keleth protested weakly. "Can't we?" Torres asked softly. "Who's going to stop us, you?" "The Dominion tried to stop us and discovered that all their weapons, all their ships, all their military superiority meant nothing against a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare before reaching the stars. Every other species in this assembly combined couldn't defeat Earth's military. You know it, we know it. Let's not pretend otherwise." The brutal honesty silenced the chamber. Torres's expression softened slightly. "But we don't want to be tyrants. We don't want to rule the galaxy through fear. We want what we've always wanted: peace, cooperation, mutual respect. The difference is that now you understand peace must be backed by strength, that cooperation requires justice, that respect is earned through demonstrated capability." He gestured to data files being transmitted to the assembly. "These are humanity's complete military capabilities. All of them. Our weapon systems, our fleet compositions, our technological advantages. We're sharing everything because we want you to understand exactly what happens if anyone tries what the Dominion did. We want potential aggressors to look at these files and realize that genocide carries consequences too terrible to contemplate." Torres stood, preparing to end the transmission. "The Galactic Assembly can continue to exist if it accepts its new role, enforcing laws that actually protect people, not just maintaining economic status quo. Earth will serve as the enforcement arm for these laws. We will be the ones who respond when diplomacy fails. We will be the ones who ensure justice is more than empty words. And if we refuse," asked the Sentry Arbiter quietly, "then the assembly becomes irrelevant," Torres said bluntly. "Species will look to Earth for protection, not to a council that allowed genocide and called it acceptable. You can maintain your illusion of authority by working with us, or you can fade into historical footnotes. Your choice." The transmission ended. The assembly delegates looked at each other, recognizing the fundamental shift in galactic power structures. Humanity had revealed itself not as a peaceful species corrupted by war, but as a warrior species that had chosen peace until forced to remember what it really was. 6 months later, the war crimes trials concluded, Supreme Commander Thrak was found guilty of genocide and crimes against sapient beings. He was executed by firing squad, his death broadcast across the galaxy as a warning. 217 other Dominion officials received sentences ranging from life imprisonment to execution. The trials were scrupulously fair, with legal representation and full due process, which somehow made them more terrifying. Humanity was proving it could be utterly ruthless while following its own strict rules of justice. The Zelkari Dominion was reorganized under human supervision. The species was not destroyed or enslaved, but their government was rebuilt with constitutional protections for all sapient beings and strict limitations on military power. Human peacekeeping forces would remain for 50 years, ensuring the transition to a more civilized society. Admiral Amanda Cortez stood on the memorial site built where New Dawn's capital city once stood. 4.5 million names were carved into black stone, each one representing a life taken. Human engineers had cleaned the site, removed the debris, and created a place for remembrance. She thought about the cost of what humanity had done. The Zelkari military personnel who had died defending their homeworld. The psychological trauma inflicted on an entire species. The fundamental change in galactic civilization that could never be undone. The loss of humanity's innocence, the final acceptance that they were what they had always been. Apex predators who had learned to wear civilized masks. But she also thought about the alternative. A galaxy where genocide carried no real consequences, where economic power granted immunity from justice, where mercy was seen as weakness and peace only existed because no one had been provoked enough to disturb it. 4.5 million people, she whispered to the memorial stones. You died because we tried to be better than what we were, because we believed civilization meant more than just enforced order. We were wrong, but your deaths taught the galaxy a lesson it desperately needed to learn. She saluted the memorial, then turned to leave. Her ship was waiting to take her to the next assignment. There were 6 other species with territorial disputes that looked like they might escalate to violence. Earth's peacekeeping forces would intervene early, before tragedies occurred. The galaxy was learning that human peacekeepers were no longer gentle mediators, but heavily armed enforcers who would stop conflicts before they started. Back on Earth, Ambassador Torres walked through the gardens of the diplomatic complex, a place he used to love. It felt different now, tainted by what he knew humanity had become, or perhaps revealed as what humanity had always been. His assistant found him there bringing news from the assembly. 3 more species had signed mutual defense treaties with Earth. 2 others had requested human military advisors. The galaxy was reorganizing itself around humanity's power, accepting the new order because the alternative was irrelevance. They're calling it the Terran Peace, his assistant said. Peace maintained by overwhelming force and the threat of human intervention. Better than the alternative, Torres replied tiredly. Better than a galaxy where massacres are answered with committees. Do you think we did the right thing? She asked quietly. Torres looked up at the stars, thinking of all the human colonies out there, all the families living their lives in space. They would never again have to fear that their lives meant nothing to galactic civilization. They would never again wonder if genocide could happen without consequence. We did what we had to, he said finally. The galaxy mistook our choice to be peaceful for inability to be dangerous. They learned better. Maybe now, knowing what we're capable of, true peace is possible. Not peace based on everyone being nice, but peace based on everyone understanding the cost of violence. He turned away from the stars, heading back inside. There was work to do, a galaxy to reshape, justice to enforce. Humanity had tried being the galaxy's friend for 150 years. Now they would be its protector and its judge, whether the galaxy wanted them to be or not. The age of mercy was over. The age of justice had begun, and the galaxy would learn to thrive under human protection, or it would learn what happened to those who threatened the innocent. Either way, no one would ever again mistake human kindness for weakness. The species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare had reminded the galaxy of a fundamental truth. Apex predators are most dangerous when you forget what they really are.